Hey, what's up guys? It's Rick with the Digital Divide, and today we're going to talk about Dr. Doom. He is one of my favorite villains of all time, and just a complete badass. Now, normally when I do these character spotlight videos, I tend to focus on lesser known or obscure characters that you may never have heard of. But that's not the case this time. I'm sure everyone here knows who Dr. Doom is, but a lot of people surprisingly don't know anything about him. They don't know about his past or his power set. A lot of people think he's just a guy in a suit, which is definitely not the case. So sit back and relax. Today we're going to take a deep dive on Dr. Doom and go over his history. Now, before I get started, if you're not subscribed to Screen Crush, they are an amazing channel. Ryan Airy and his team over there do amazing work breaking down a lot of Marvel stuff. And he actually has an excellent, quick breakdown of Doom, just to give you a little bit of background. Take a listen.
At this point, and Dr. Doom is a far more popular villain than Kang. Dr. Doom is hands down the best villain in Marvel Comics. Heck, he's the best villain in comics. He's actually my favorite supervillain.
I agree.
I mean, guys, I own so many Dr. Doom action figures. He has an incredible story, his motivation is palpable, and everything about him just works so perfectly. Something that tragically has never been translated to the big screen very well. Now, just in case you're not familiar with Dr. Doom, I'm going to give you a really quick TLDR on this guy. His family had no homes, they were homeless, they traveled around in Europe. He was like the victim of fascism, but he was brilliant. He was a brilliant scientist. His mother was a witch who sold her soul to the devil, so he dedicated his life to saving her soul. When he was in college, he built this machine to try to save his mom from hell. It scarred his face. He blames Reed Richards. He did this through scientific means and through mystical means. He became a sorcerer. In fact, in the comics, he's second in line for Sorcerer Supreme, and he's almost as smart as Reed Richards. And then he goes on to become a monarch of Latveria, which gives him diplomatic immunity.
Diplomatic immunity.
And he is the main antagonist of the Fantastic Four. He's also an Avengers villain, and he's been part of many major events in the comics. I mean, he's like Batman and Darth Vader, but also a bit of Iron Man and Doctor Strange and Lex Luthor all them combined. And he's also got Person. What, Doug? I'm in the middle of talking about Dr. Doom. You're a fanboy then. You're right. Sorry.
So Dr. Doom's full name is Victor Von Doom. And Doom is from the fictional nation of Latveria. He was created in 1962 by Stan Lee and Jack Kirby. Now, he was originally created as a Fantastic Four villain, but later became a villain for the Avengers and many other groups within the Marvel universe. His first appearance was in the Fantastic Four #5, which came out in July of 1962. From the very beginning, they made it clear that this is a big bad in the Marvel universe, and he's going to be an imposing force that is capable of taking on the entire Fantastic Four by himself. Now, I want this book so bad, but it is so expensive. As you can see here, a 2.5 goes for over $4,000. Here, a 5.0 went for over $8,000. Once you get to 7.0 and above, you're getting over $20,000 for this book, so out of my price range for the moment. Now, Jack Kirby did an interview in 1987 where he said that Dr. Doom was the classic conception of death, of approaching death. I saw Dr. Doom as the man in the iron mask who symbolized approaching death. It was the reason for the armor and the hood. Death is connected with armor and inhuman like steel. Death is something without mercy, and human flesh contains that element of mercy. Therefore, I had to erase it, and I did that with the mask. So the whole costume design of Doom was to take away any semblance of visual humanity left in him. He's supposed to be just terrifying to look at because you can't see the face underneath. Just his eyes and the design of the suit itself is just terrifying. I remember one scene in the comic books where he takes off his mask in front of somebody for the first time, and you can see the terrified look on the guy's face when he sees what his face looks like. Doom is horribly disfigured, and by his own admission, it's not an easy sight to behold. Now, the severity of his facial disfigurement varies depending on the comic book run and the story they're telling. Sometimes it's a lot more extreme, sometimes it's less extreme, but his face is pretty messed up. How did that happen, you might ask? Well, back in the day, Cynthia Von Doom, who is Dr. Doom's mother, gets killed by Mephisto back when Doom is still young. As he grows up and becomes a man, he goes off to Empire State University, and this is where he would meet fellow student Reed Richards for the first time, who we all know becomes the leader of the Fantastic Four. Now, Doom desperately wanted to communicate with his dead mother, so while he was at university, he created a machine that would allow him to speak to the dead, and the intention there was that he wanted to be able to speak with his mother. Now, Doom ultimately ended up creating this machine, but there were some flaws in the design, and Reed Richards tries to warn him about one critical flaw in the machine specifically that could have catastrophic results. But Victor, being stubborn, continued on with the experiment, and the machine violently fails, resulting in an explosion that severely damages his face. So, as you may or may not know, Jonathan Majors was fired by Disney because he was found guilty of some of the charges that he was accused of. So it looks like Kang might be on the way out, and this might be a great time to bring in Dr. Doom because he's way more imposing of a character than Kang ever was. In fact, the first time we meet him is as He Who Remains in Loki Season 1, where he gets killed by Sylvie. Next, we meet him in Ant-Man in Quantumania, and he gets defeated by Ant-Man. Lastly, we see him as Victor Timely in Loki Season 2, and he dies in that. Spoiler alerts for Season 2. But at the end of Loki Season 2, the time loom gets destroyed, and they go back in time over and over and over again to try to find a way to save it. But no matter what they do, it always gets destroyed at the end. It's a point in time that cannot be changed. So Loki makes the ultimate sacrifice and decides that he is going to replace the time loom. Loki believes that this is really the only way to stop all of the Kang variants, and it's really sad the way that it ends because he has to give up everything and kind of sit in isolation by himself at the end of time just to make sure that reality as we know it doesn't end.
He's giving us a chance.
So what ends up happening is that Loki grabs all of the timelines that were in the loom and being controlled by the TVA, and he uses his magic to bring them all back together. And by holding these timelines together, he's able to give each timeline life using his magic as a god. And without him, time as we know it would end. And so Loki is keeping all of the Kangs in check. They're no longer a threat as long as he sits on that throne at the end of time. So in my opinion, Dr. Doom is a menace on the level of someone like Thanos. He's incredibly imposing, and even Kingpin, at least the depiction played by D'Onofrio in the Daredevil TV show. I think characters like that are incredibly scary and imposing, and I think Kang just lacked that. Stan Lee kind of goes over his philosophy of villains here, and I completely agree with it.
The villains, I think, are the most important people in a story, because in a running series, because you've already met the hero. You know who the hero is, you know who the hero does, and if the hero wasn't fighting some unpredictable guy or girl or something, monster, who you didn't feel the hero didn't have a chance to defeat, then there'd be nothing to interest you. So the first thing you have to do with a villain, for those of you who are villain writers, the first thing you have to do is get a villain who seems to be unbeatable by the hero. It seems the hero has no chance to beat this guy. Then, of course, it makes your job tougher, because you have to figure out, well, how will the hero beat him? Because he has to at the end, unless you want to kill the series, which could happen too.
So next, we're going to talk a little bit about powers and abilities. Doom is first and foremost a scientist and an inventor who possesses genius-level intellect. Think Tony Stark. So if you think about it, Iron Man doesn't really have any real powers. He's just incredibly smart, so he designs that suit. And that's really all he's got. Dr. Doom has that as well. He's on the same level of intellect as a Tony Stark. He's also an incredibly powerful sorcerer. He was primarily taught by Tibetan monks and his lover at the time, Morgan Le Fay, who is a big villain in the Marvel Universe. She's a master-level sorceress, and she taught Doom everything that he knows. Doom also has armor, and his armor augments his natural physical strength and durability to superhuman levels, to the point where he's able to hold his own against Spider-Man, the Hulk, and the Thing in combat. So unlike characters like Richard Reed's or Tony Stark, Doom is familiar with both magic and science because of his parents and because of his background. And if we jump over to the Marvel database, we can see that he's also got cosmic abilities, and he got that by stealing them from the Silver Surfer. Doom created something called a power cosmic infusing machine, and he used that to steal the cosmic powers from Silver Surfer so that he could boost his own abilities. So he's just a complete badass. There's actually an article by WhatCulture.com called "The 10 Villains Dr. Doom Utterly Destroyed," and it turns out those include characters like Thanos and Kang the Conqueror. So Doom is just on a whole nother level when it comes to his abilities, and I think that given the state of the MCU, this is a great time to bring him in, but it really needs to be done right. We know that the end of this current MCU saga is going to culminate with Avengers Secret Wars, and if you are familiar with Secret Wars in the comic books, the big bad in that comic book series was not Kang the Conqueror, it was in fact Doom. And Doom was the main antagonist throughout the entire Secret Wars run, so it makes way more sense to pivot into Doom being the big bad, because that's how it was in the comics for Secret Wars, which is where we know they're headed. Doom was also the main villain in Marvel Ultimate Alliance, which is, I think, one of the best Marvel games ever made. If you want to see how cool something like that might look, here's a little clip. Now, Doom has had a variety of different armors throughout his life. The original armor set was actually a high-strength titanium alloy, so it was not as strong as vibranium or adamantium, but later on, during the evolution of Doom, at one point during a miniseries called the Doom War, he gets a fully vibranium armor suit, and he does this by stealing most of the vibranium reserves from Wakanda and defeating Black Panther. So he's had, I think, 20 or so suits throughout the comic books, but I think the strongest is probably his all-vibranium suit. And while he's wearing that suit, he's almost indestructible. That's probably going to do it for me today, guys. I just love Doom as a character, and I hope that I can get his first appearance in comic book form at some point in my life. But yeah, that's going to do it for me today. Let me know in the comments below what you think about Doom, and if you think he's a good replacement for Kang in the MCU. As always, thank you for watching.